Yeah, so just feel the Dan Chan. It should feel like there's almost like an elastic pull to the ground. It's so much happier when we're close to the ground, when it is close to the ground. Okay, so let's just start with a bit of breathing. And just try and get into the reverse breathing. So to do that, it's best to breathe through the small hole. Because when you breathe through the small hole, breathing in actually tenses the belly. So here, sucking in and blowing out. So remember, with the breathing, it's a pressure differential. So as you breathe in, pressure increases and increases because the volume's decreasing. And then you just let it go and it will explode outwards. So this is the yielding phase, drawing in, and the attacking phase. Okay, now let's alternate. Yeah, so one hand opening and one hand closing into a fist. And you can just make it even more alternate by turning the fist one over. And feel the feet joining in. So the hand that opens, that foot opens up, and then that foot closes, and it's that closing of the toes that pulls you into it. So you're shifting the weight and producing a turn by clenching the toes. It's the action of the toes on the ground that's making the waist turn rather than the other way around. So these toes are clenching down here, and that pulls me into it. So it's difficult because one side of the body is contracting whilst the other side of the body is opening up and extending. Okay, so now let's just bring it back to riding horse. So I don't know if you've had a chance to watch that clip I sent on the fascia and tensegrity, but it's really important because it's what John would call a game changer. It changes everything. So we normally think of the body as being a skeleton of bones stacked one on top of another that's clad in flesh and muscle and skin. So now they're saying that's completely wrong. That actually, the thing that actually gives you structure is more the fascia, so the connective tissue. They call it the soft skeleton. So you're this mass of all these threads and sheets of fascia, and they are all holding the bones in place, and none of the bones really touch each other. Yeah, so they're all sort of floating in space, and your structure is actually the fascia. So that's what we just want to do. So we work on it with the sacrum, this feeling that the sacrum is floating. It's not actually touching the hips or the bottom of the spine. It's got this ability to just move around with a degree of freedom. And just visualizing it, they call it the fascial net or the fascial web. So this net is a sort of infinite net of fabric, of threads and sheets and these like honeycomb structures. It's really complex. So that, and it's very elastic, and it's also viscous. They call it viscoelasticity. So elastic basically means that when you deform it, it goes back to its original shape when you take away the stress. And viscous basically means it doesn't, but it just goes slowly. Yeah? So there's a sense of springiness. So when we work on the bounce, the trampoline skin, that we're just purely working on the fascia. And this also this feeling of these flows through the body, that's the viscous flow, you know, imagining that we're in water when we're moving, that's also the fascia. So they like, you know, they say the biggest organ in the body is the skin, yeah? Well, the fascia is like the internal skin. It covers everything. It covers all the organs, the bones, you know, the arteries and the veins. You know, when you cut up a piece of chicken, you know, there's like a skin over the muscle, and you peel it off. Yeah, that's the fascia. Okay. And now let's just move side to side. Yeah. So what we want to just try and feel is that we're pulling. So the fascia is basically a net, a continuous net. There's a pathway through it to every other point within it. Yeah. Whereas the bones are like independent and they're floating in space. So once you're in one bone, you have to pass through fascia to get to another bone. And so the fascial web is under tension. It's what they call a tensegrity structure. So tensegrity is just a portmanteau word. It's a combination of tension and integrity. And so the fascial web is tightening all the time. It stays together. It keeps its integrity by tightening. So that's the good tension. That's the tension we want to sort of encourage, that elastic pull. So here I'm pulling with my foot. And that is stretching this. It's loosening and freeing up the sacrum. So this is what I want. I want my movement from leg to leg to free my sacrum rather than compress it. Yeah, and just feel the quality of the pull. It's like your heart has to go out. My heart goes out to this point and I yearn for it. Yeah? So it's like an emotional thing as much as anything. And but John, you know, he'd often, you know, he would always say that basically, you know, people get it wrong, not because they're stupid necessarily, but because they just don't have enough energy to get it right. Yeah. And I once asked him about it because I wasn't really sure what he meant by energy yet. And you know, it just became clear from when he was talking that he didn't mean energy in the way that, you know, we generally would. Yeah. So it's not the energy that you would need to go and do a task. Yeah. So it's not like the energy that a marathon runner would have, you know, where they can just basically just keep going. I mean, he would argue that a marathon runner has got dreadful energy because they're scrawny and flat. If you ever met any, there's a real flatness to them because they just basically have to just turn off from the pain and just keep going. Yeah. So, you know, what he meant by energy was really more enthusiasm. Yeah. So just the enthusiasm to allow yourself to be inspired, to allow yourself to be possessed by a God, which is what enthusiasm means. Yeah. So it's what Nietzsche called an even cheerfulness. Yeah. An even cheerfulness is the reward for a long, brave, diligent, and subterranean seriousness for which, admittedly, not everyone is suited. So, you know, I was reading some anthropologist, can't remember his name now, but he was saying basically the most human of our faculties is the ability to empathize. So the ability not just to sympathize, not just to feel for the other person, but to feel what the other person is feeling, as though it is you having the experience. Yeah? And that's what you really need energy for. You need energy to be compassionate, yeah? To put yourself in the other person's shoes. It's not something that you choose to do. It's something that you can't help doing if you're a human being. Yeah. So you just feel You've got a big heart that just wants to embrace everything it encounters enthusiastically. A heart that's just willing to be inspired. So it's like something in me just opens and then I have to rush towards it because there's almost like a vacuum that sucks me towards that foot. So, ooh. So the people that have the best energy are children. You know how enthusiastic they are, you know? When they greet you, or dogs, you know? I've got a student and he's got 4 kids. So basically his life's over. But they got a dog and he says, you know, when he arrives home, the only creature that actually makes a fuss over him is the dog. The kids are all doing their own thing on their own gadgets, you know, and they don't even notice him arrive. So children have worse energy than they used to have, but they've still got better energy than their parents generally. It's just sort of innocent, you know, innocent and enthusiastic and just willing to engage, willing to take a risk. Okay, so let's just bring it back to the riding horse. So we just want this feeling that my min-meng is pressing back and my sacrum is angling down the legs. Yeah, so the 2 things that we need for Tai Chi, we need the upper body and the lower body to unify so that there's no break here. And we need the left and the right sides to split apart so that there's almost like a degree of independence between the 2 halves. A bit like a piano player, you know, they say the piano player's major breakthrough comes when they just learn to do completely independent things with each hand, because when you start off playing the piano, you're doing this, both hands are wanting to do the same thing. And then to get all the 10 fingers splitting and able to be independent. Okay, now let's just press. So just pressing with the foot. So this is the difficulty really, because of course, when we push the ground, we're compressing, yeah? We're sort of pushing things together. So what we want is to move energetically. If I'm forceful, I would just straighten my leg like a lever and just push myself across, yeah? So that's what we want to get away from. So if I'm using my leg in the sort of forceful way, then it will always tend to push me upwards when I straighten the leg. So what I want is to just squeeze the foot into the ground, like I'm just about to straighten it, in order to get some energy flowing through me. And then that energy that leaves my body sucks me along with it. So I'm still being pulled, but I'm being pulled by the flow of energy rather than by the leg, the empty leg. Yeah, so I'm sinking into this leg. Now, this is really important. So this is basically the equilibrium, the central equilibrium. I sink into the foot. So I'm sinking into the foot. I'm letting gravity pull me down. So what I don't want is for the leg to be offering a holding force. I don't want my leg to be holding me still in position. I want the leg to be generating an opposing force. Because it's when those two sort of pass each other, that's when it can become energy. So I'm sinking into the foot, and the foot is squeezing something up through me. So this is really important, because basically every time you come into a foot in Tai Chi, this is what's happening. Yeah, because it's as I come into this foot, it's the energy, it's the press coming up here that becomes the cross energy, and it's that's pulling me with it. Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. You know, so we just have to get out of this thing of wanting to control, of wanting to produce a holding force in order to make everything still. That would be the wrong sort of stillness. Something's oozing through my body. This is the viscous, yeah? There's like a sort of, almost like syrup, it's sort of squeezing through, and then I just go with it. So I'm using the leg, the interaction between the leg and the ground, to produce a flow which then takes me with it. I'm not using the leg to move the body. I'm using the leg to move the energy, and then I'm allowing that energy to shift the body. This is how it feels. I mean, obviously it's not really that, but this is how it feels. Ooh. And this is like pure enthusiasm. This is pure energy that's coming from spirit, that's being generated by spirit. So you have to be able to see it, to visualize it, to be willing to feel it, be willing to take a gamble, you know, to just try it out and make it happen. Ooh. And this flow is along the, what they call the anatomy trains. So the trains of fascia. So here up the inside of the leg, across the sacrum, up the opposite side of the back, into the arm. So yeah, so it's very tentacle-like. They're just tentacles of energy that you send out. And because you've invested so much in the energy as it goes out, your body has to follow it. It's just sucked along for the ride. So imagine, you know, that octopus doesn't have any bones, it's just jelly. So imagine what it has to do with its mind to actually intend that tentacle out. It's not going to just do this, yeah? It's got to really mean it and squeeze it and be fierce. There's a certain, that's what we just, that's enthusiasm, that's energy. Okay. So let's just bring it back to riding horse. And again, just feeling this area. Yeah, I've got a student and she's sort of tough and strong and just got a natural root. And so when she's in a posture like this, we were doing this, yeah? So let's just do a bit of this. And you really got, you know, they're like two students next to each other. One is short and squat and the other one is tall. And the one that was tall was very much looking down on this ball as she was rolling it. And the other one, it's like her eyes were down here, just looking up into the ball. So that's what we want. Like we're actually in the danchen. The head is almost an embarrassment. So just visualize this ball as like a yin-yang symbol. So it's wanting to pass through the middle. So it's basically just wanting to become a figure of 8 all the time. Yeah, so the circle just becomes a figure of 8 because the center is always trying to pull you towards it. Okay, so now just coming back here. So really feel this area, really. So this part is cutting under, this part is cutting over, the two sides are coming round. So it really is a cave. And you're drawn right back into it. Yeah, and you're just really you're just sinking into the legs all the time. Yeah, normally our legs are pushing us out of them all the time. So in Tai Chi, we're just trying to reverse that so that we're actually just sliding down all the time into them. If we can keep that as like a continuous sort of melting, then what's coming up from the ground will be more like energy and less like a force. Okay. And now let's just, so basically just this exercise again, but just turning it now. So it just becomes the first warm-up exercise. But again, I want to feel as though it's very much the action of my foot on the ground that's turning me. I want it to come from as low down in my body as possible. That's it. And just this sense that you're collapsing into your dantian. Yeah, you're folding up. So just trying to really get rid of that break in the sacrum area between the upper and the lower body. So just trying to get right down to the earth, to the ground. So we don't realize it, but the break that we normally have here, where the upper body is trying to rear up all the time, it's basically just like a contempt for the ground. We're better than that. And there's a story of Yushiba, someone defeated him, which was quite unusual. And someone said to him, why did it happen? He says, I just couldn't stoop low enough. So he didn't actually get into the ground, which is unusual for him because he was so short and squat. That's the thing that he did have, was a great root. Let's bring it back to riding horse. So again, it's sinking. This is such a strong gravitational center. It's threatening to get you to completely collapse. And just feel that in order to think to myself, heaven forbid, I have to press from the ground. I have to bring some curvature into my lower back. I have to reject the ground, basically. So you've got a choice, really. You can either be directing your energy up to here, or you can be sinking down to the ground. Okay. And now let's just step a little bit, but like we're doing the first posture of the form. So just stepping across, moving, and then stepping up. Again, just trying to keep this. Every time you do anything, it will try and come out. The bum will try and flick out a bit. Because we're just, we're used to having ego in control, which requires the bum to be stuck out, basically. So we're just not used to doing it any other way. So we just have to really practice doing things really carefully and slowly. So I step, then I move the weight, and then I step. And just feeling the outside edge, I'm cutting. Remember calf regel? The spoon of the leg, the foot is the spoon of the leg. And it cuts into the ground like this. So I go into the leg, that this tentacle from my sacrum has to slip down the leg, because if I just move into the leg, it's going to cause compression here, and that will make my bum flick out a little bit. So I've got to get this feeling that I'm sending some energy out from the sacroiliac, and it's pulling me into correct posture. So you can either think of it as energy coming from this leg, or it's just something that's reached out down the leg. Okay. So now let's so the same thing really, but just lifting the knee. So the same, grabbing the ground with the foot as it goes down. I'm grabbing with my toes and pulling myself into the outside edge of the foot. And then it's like some energy comes up and lifts this leg. So I just want to feel, I try and get my knee as high as I can in order to get the lower back really rounded out. So negative lordosis, if anything. If there's any sense of sort of settling onto the ground, then your bum will flick out a bit. You just want this feeling that there's something under the ground that's drawing you down, drawing you into it. Yeah, so you just need good energy. You need the energy to see it and to make it happen just with force of will, really. It's just, ooh, I really feel it. And it's always going to be tottery and precarious. It's just a sign that you're getting it right. The more unstable it feels. So what's holding it all together is just your good energy. Yeah, so this good energy, this is what tends to diminish when we get older. Yeah. So we just have to really just look after it. Okay, let's just squat. Yeah, so this is the best thing really for just rounding out the lower back. So just feel, how does my mind relax when my min meng area is really dominant and protruding and spreading energy all over my back? So it's like you've got a shell, like a carapace on your back. So there's a real difference between front and back, as well as left and right. I mean, left and right are really just mirrors of each other. You know, when one goes up, the other one goes down. Whereas front and back are just very, very different. And then just hands on the floor. And just feel the internal movement. Feel the slippage, what they call it creep. The creep of your fascia. This feeling that there's these sort of just, these movements inside. So the fascia is slippery. So one of its functions is to enable the things inside you to slip over each other so they don't stick. So when John used to use the word juicy, he would say, you know, you need to become more juicy. That's basically fascia, you know, that's a quality of the fascia. It's almost got a liquid oiliness. It's more like an oil than, because it's slippery. And then just loading the arms a little. Yeah, so we want to develop a mind, and here mind and energy basically the same thing. Develop a mind which tonifies the fascia and travels around the fascia. So it's just, it's just, when you're touching another person, it's like your fascia is joining with theirs. So there's a real, your two bodies almost become one. So the leaning exercises that I do with my students, where we're just both holding hands and just leaning back away from each other. So this sort of stretchy pull between us, it's pure fascia. It's the same connectivity between us as it is within your own body. So it's just one thing really. So you can feel the fascia inside your own body as being this really complex web or net. But then you can also feel yourself contained within a fascia, almost like the fascia of the world, of reality, all these connecting threads. You're connected energetically with everything within the room. You're just another object in this vast fascial net. So it's just seeing the world very, very differently, and just makes you realize, that the way we see the world normally, which is all based upon the rational mind, this idea that things can be split into bits and we can analyze the bits and it will give us some idea about how the whole works, which of course it doesn't. The guy that sort of popularized all the stuff about fascia is called Tom Myers, and he had this beautiful saying, the whole is real, but division is conceptual. So we just want to get out of that conceptual mind and just get into a mind which is just this web of energy, all these flows and intentions and intensities. Okay, so let's just bring it up. So again, just feeling the ground. The ground doesn't want to release you. Yeah, so we relax, sink and relax. It's the first instruction, really. So just when you relax, then gravity can take you. So that's really just clearing ourselves of tension. So we want to sink down to the ground so that we can be free of the ground. Yeah. Because when you are this fascial net full of these bones that are they're suspended by fascia, and they don't really touch each other. I mean, they're almost touch. If your bones touched each other, you wouldn't last very long. You'd wear out pretty quick, yeah? So when you're like that, it's almost like you're weightless. It's like the bones are sort of floating in space. So we relax so that we can just let go of the tension that's holding us, protecting us from reality, so that we can feel how, in a sense, we're free of gravity. There's all this sort of floating. It's just as easy to move up with the energy as it is to move down. If anything, it's easier because everything wants to come up into the head. Yeah. It's like the guy that Tom Myers, yeah, the guy in that video clip that I sent. Apparently, he went to like one of the natural history museums in America. There's like a big skeleton of a brontosaurus. Yeah, remember how they used to say the brontosaurus couldn't survive on land? It had to be partly submerged in water because it was just too big. They couldn't understand how it could possibly move around. So he was like an anatomist, and he just saw it and just thought, you know, everything I know about biomechanics is wrong because this thing just shouldn't be able to move. It shouldn't be able to hold its neck up, yeah, because those bones are so massive. And then apparently he went out, got thoroughly depressed, left the museum, and there was a statue. It's not really a statue, it's a tower. This sculpture by Kenneth Snelson is the tensegrity structure. It had all these sort of poles, these aluminium poles that were all connected with like wires, yeah. And it was just almost floating, yeah. And that's when he just had a brainwave. That is how the body works. It doesn't work with these bones pushing against each other to plod along, yeah. It's much lighter than that, yeah. I'll send you the pictures. Yeah, so what is it that's stopping us from sinking? It's this trying to pull us up all the time. Okay, so let's just bring it up. So just feel those three areas, the hips, shoulders, and the jaw. Yeah. So interesting with Sayala, you know, when she starts to really sort of relax, she's always going with her mouth, just, you know, because she just feels the tension there, and that has to release before, you know, because it needs to release as like a totality, really. Okay, so let's